Thank you so much, Satish, Dinesh, Naveen, who have joined us from different places of the world. Let me introduce Satish first because he was the one who came early, so he deserves to be introduced first. Satish, thank you so much for coming over, and let me introduce you. So Satish is a software engineer. He has been heading Red Hat for almost 17 years in Pune and other places. So he was the guy behind Red Hat. And he has been very passionate about deep tech. And his company is called Dive. We're going to talk a lot about Dive and about his experience in the tech world and how he has been spearheading some fabulous companies like Red Hat and now Dive. Uh, Welcome, Satish. Looking forward to speaking with you.
Thank you, Amit.
Our next panelist is Naveen Gurg. Naveen is a squash player and sometimes he works as well. He's a software engineer and he's from IIT. And as all IITs do after the IIT, they go to US. And that's exactly what Naveen also did. He worked in Texas for many years and Microsoft, and now he's a company called NLP Core. Naveen, we would love to know about you and NLP Core when we talk more. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. I'll do correct that I spent 8 years in Europe as well. So
Excellent. Wonderful. Wonderful. Dinesh is a founder of a company called Intelligence, and he's a PhD in computer vision and deep learning while he was working in a lot of technology areas. I think Intelligence is about cameras in which you're able to detect a lot of things which human eye cannot, and in order to reduce the response time, in emergency situations, your cameras, your technology can help people behave faster, act faster, because the cameras can capture a lot which human are not able to. Great work, Dinesh. Great work you're doing. Welcome aboard. Thank you. So let me introduce myself as well, guy. My name is Amit. I'm an engineer and a lawyer, and I'm basically a patent lawyer practicing IP from last 15 years. After my engineering, I went to the States. I was working in Motorola as an in-house patent counsel, and that's where I learned about patents. Uh, Came back to India, pursued my law from Faculty of Law at university, and now we have a law firm called Photon Legal. We primarily focus on IP and a bit of corporate law, helping a lot of clients like Tata's, Bisleris of the world, a lot of US clients in securing their IP, patents, trademarks, copyrights around the globe. That's about us. Let me ask my first question to Satish. Satish, you have been working in Red Hat for a very long time, and then you took the plunge of leaving a cushy job and starting your own venture.
Mhm.
What do you need in order to do that? A lot of people in the world have cushy jobs, they're not able to leave it. What do you need to leave your job and take that plunge and just do it?
Uh, there are many reasons behind it, but I think the core reason is when you spot an opportunity and you have the belief in terms of like how big and make that opportunity. I think that is where most of the decision made. At least in my case, like that is where it is. So just to give a quick background and how we ended up with Divi. I've been an open source guy from the mid '90s, and then became the engineering head for Red Hat, and while building many products, and then their focus while we are building those products is to how do we commoditize things, or how do we kind of break in the lock-ins created by some companies and kind of make it easy for people to consume those services. So everything that we did through Red Hat is focused on that one goal, saying that commoditize, be it the compute side of things, be it the storage side of things, or be it the application interfacing side of things, right? So as we're working on that area, we realized, okay, data is the next big thing, because many of the companies are focused on storing data, right? There are many storage companies out there and Red Hat also has storage solutions which only allow you to store data. But data is becoming the DNA for every organization today, right? Be it the technology organization or a non-technology organization, data is the thing that is driving them. So our focus, or the opportunity we notice, is the trust levels on the data is very low, right? In terms of how do an organization secure data from both internal and external threats? Companies invest a lot in terms of countering the external threats, but when it comes to internal stuff, it is not at the same level of investment in terms of how do you protect your data. And then how do you exchange data between different endpoints, and how do you make sure that the people who are receiving the data is receiving the same set of data that you send them. There's no tampering that happened in between. So we looked at data as a foundation and try to see how do we build some of these primitives which can then be leveraged by all the platforms that is consuming data, so that every output that has been generated by decision-making system can be really trusted. So we spot that as an opportunity, and we spot that opportunity way back in 2017. But we were very clear saying that, look, this is not something, a technology that we create as something that only Dhive can do, because solving trust at the scale of internet is not something a single company can achieve. So we looked into kind of collaborating with different bodies in terms of organizations and standard bodies, and trying to kind of start some conversations around it, and which led to creating a couple of standards at the W3C for in terms of how does the data formats look like. Because the key is to make sure that these data or these kind of patterns that we create, this remains interoperable, and so that any applications can consume it. And that moment kind of took a turn last year, where we formed a global foundation under the Linux Foundation called Trust Over IP. So this is like we and another 28 companies came together to form this. And the goal was like, yes, this is a common challenge many companies are trying to solve, and that is leading to different implementation, different standards, and it is also creating chaos at the market in terms of what to be used. So let's have this foundation which will operate at a similar way how the TCP/IP standard got standardized long back. And so the foundation is not creating a new standards. It is basically consolidating all the existing standards and saying that, okay, yeah, this is what you use at different layers. And that has taken a nice adoption in a way. It now has more than 200 companies around the world who's participating in it and kind of leveraging that. So things are looking good. And if I come to Dhive, with all these different blocks coming real or becoming real now, the real focus for us is to reimagine the digital transaction. When I say digital transaction, both online and offline, reimagine the digital transaction with instantly verifiable data as the foundation, because that can actually make every transaction look like as frictionless as what we experience in a credit card transaction today, right? It should be as quick and as frictionless as possible. And that's like the not so short overview of like what we are doing.
Makes sense. So you're doing a great job on data. So yes, data is actually the key for everything that is happening. There's a lot of laws around data also, privacy laws, a lot of GDPR laws and all of that. And a lot of big companies are thriving on data, whether it's Google or other Facebook of the world. They are launching the next product based upon how customers and consumers are behaving and consuming data. So if you are in that space, very promising, and you are trying to make a environment, make an ecosystem by joining hands with a lot of superb companies that you're already working with, 30 plus, 200 plus companies in handling data the way it has to be handled. Great work, Satish. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you more in the panel.
Sure.
Dinesh, over to you. Tell us tell us your why. Why are you doing what you're doing?
So in terms of that, I've always been a serial entrepreneur. I started my first company when I was 17. I saw an opportunity, took it up. Came to Canada. I was a CTO of an augmented reality organization. I met my co-founder. He was working in a next generation 911 project in US. Even today, you pick your call and call 911, even if there is a flood or any kind of conditions. Even there is a power cut, you get floods of calls. And sometimes, whenever these calls happen, you don't have enough resources to deploy. You don't have enough ambulatory services, you don't have enough fire services, you don't have the police services, and so on. So when these conditions happen, what happens in the right now is chronologically, whichever call comes first, they send an ambulatory service to that. They don't identify what is more severe to another. For example, if I'm in a car and something happens to me, I just say, twist my ankle, and I'm feeling that it's severe. But whereas in another condition, there might be a kid who needs immediate medical care at that situation, but the ambulatory services would be supplying to me if I make the call first. And sometimes it's too overwhelming in these conditions. And right now, when we had this idea, we went to IBM and we spoke to them saying that this is what our idea is. And they were interested in taking us into IBM Tech Accelerator because that's a huge problem which IBM was also solving in terms of video analytics. Because right now, if you see in the market, there is a lot in terms of images, but not a lot in terms of video. Because image is much more easier to analyze what is happening. But as a video, it's a lot difficult because lighting condition matters, environment matters, weather, so noise, because a camera could be panning. So there is a lot of things which you're talking about. So we were interested in that space. And then when we spoke with some of the first responders, even in the first world countries, what they have cameras around the world and they have cameras everywhere. What they do is whenever they get an alarm, they go back to the video center. If at all the alarm is ambiguous, they go back to the video center. They try finding out what happened. It takes them 20 to 25 minutes to contact that. And in terms of an US, it's a $1.8 trillion project, which has been happening for the past 8 years, sorry. So this is what we wanted to solve. We wanted to solve how can we analyze things? And then we came down to video sector and IoT data centers, which is already around the world. But when you talk about video surveillance, everyone gets in mind only on one thing, facial recognition, and it is all about privacy. But we wanted to prove to the world that it's not just about facial recognition, but it is also about the safety and the safety around that particular place. When you're installing a camera in your location, you want to be alerted when something is going wrong, rather than it identifying the facial recognition or just storing the data into a video source and deleting it in every 60 days or 180 days according to the privilege. So we wanted to address that situation. That's how we came down and we built an AI which can analyze incoming data string and pick out anything which is being different or different to a human eye. It's like a pair of eyes which is looking into it, but it is sitting on your own server. So you don't have a concern on privacy. And the other thing is we don't collect facial data, but we actually collect only the metadata informations. So when something is going wrong, rather than someone looking into 40 different cameras or hundreds of cameras, he would be looking into 5 or 6 cameras. So that reduces the response time for a human attention. And human mind is more prone to fatigue. And in terms of diversion, they see a smaller Facebook ad, they would be immediately on their phone rather than looking on the videos, what's happening. So we would just built an alert system which can alert them when something is going wrong. So this is how the idea came in. And right now we are partners with some of the top companies like IBM. We are doing with Xilinx. We are also doing some smart city projects with the Middle East and in North America.
Excellent. Wonderful work, Dinesh. Dinesh, superb story, super work that you're doing. A follow-up question to you. You mentioned that you started your entrepreneurial journey. It's a journey. It's never a destination. At 17, right? You keep moving, you do keep doing new work, new ideas keep coming. How should an entrepreneur zero down on an idea? So many ideas come to us, so many problems exist. How do you know that this is the one I want to solve? This is the one that's close to my heart? Because that decision will define your next 5 years or 10 years of your work in that company. How do you zero down?
So whenever I had the idea, the first thing which I would do is talk to people on how much is this actually a problem to them. Before actually diving into solving a problem, talk to people on if this problem is solved, how many people would be benefiting from it and how much are they willing to pay for it. For example, when I spoke about the project in terms of video analytics are there in the world for a very long time, but it's all about using the data for the right use. And when we spoke, we saw it's a $1.8 trillion product, plus still they wanted to change the cameras. But when you're having a problem, all you have to do is find a few people in the same market and talk to them in saying, if this problem is solved, what is it benefiting you? Is it adding a value to your product? Can you increase your process time into a product? If so, what is the parameters we're talking about? Sorry about that. So then we can talk about the values and what that problem can solve and how much can you actually put the time as a product.
Got it. So your dog is missing you.
Yeah, she's definitely missing me. Work from home culture.
Naveen, thank you so much for that, Dinesh. That was really helpful. He's talking about product market fit, talk to people how much they can pay, what's the market size, and those things determine whether the idea should be pursued or not. Uh, Naveen, tell us a bit more about NLP Core. You got to unmute yourself.
Thank you. So my journey kind of parallels the others. I spent some time in the corporate world, and to me, that, as you mentioned, what is the idea that you really want to solve that defines your next 5 to 10 years, and that indeed, took me last couple of years at Microsoft, as to if I really want to do something, what is it that going to be that Microsoft one day or Google another day or Amazon another day don't end up doing, ironically, I chose something that now they are all doing, but at the time, when I left, search was just happening, and it was, either keyword searches, or it was page ranking systems that were the two major search techniques that are out there. And we wanted to do something very different. We wanted it to be contextual, and the idea was, can we uh, just try to get the context from what user is looking for. So given, a user keyword, rather than finding out what other users have searched around those keywords, we actually looked for the actual sentences and phrases in the corpus and put some value around that sentences and phrases. And that was essentially the natural language processing, whether these words are nouns, if they are pronouns, whether they are verb defining, relating to pronouns. And those neighborhoods actually, we attached more value than the other words, and we built this knowledge graph. And essentially that became genesis of what we did. And we spent next actually 3 4 years, in fact, fighting the patent office, but we ended up getting about 18 different claims. And then we extended those claims to add even user feedback, so we can actually apply user feedback into. So we have in situ feedback, correction, all that built into our technology. And going, relating it back to what Dinesh was saying, that it is, okay, great, we build this platform. Are there any use cases? Is that really valuable? Is it solving real problems? And more importantly, are people willing to pay for it? And I think, that is really very, very important question. And we, coming from a very deep technology platform, we were very lucky to find some very specific use cases. I mean, I happen to be in Seattle, which also actually, as you may know, not only just the IT hub, but it is also a biotechnology hub. We have some of the key, you know, biological research companies here. In fact, the Center for Infectious Disease Research is here. The Cancer Research Center is here. Neurological Neurosurgery Center is here. And I happen to know some of my friends, as you mentioned, and I play squash. That's a great connection to have. And one of the actually the head of life sciences or the infectious disease research, we were having this discussion, and they said, Naveen, we can apply your engine to our problems. And he brought up a very specific problem that when they do a research, human body has about 800 different proteins. And when they start research, majority of infectious disease research start at a very molecular level. They have these yeast, which has very primitive form, and they select only 8 to 10 proteins on which they want to do a research, and they want to basically build you know antibodies that can fight a particular protein set. It's all of, I mean, actually what is happening with coronavirus is very relevant to that as well. Whether it was this particular center, by the way, has been working on Zika, dengue, malaria, and recently Ebola, as well as recently on coronavirus. And I mean, coming from an IT world, this was a good introduction to me into biology. And the challenge they had was how they can whittle it down from 800 odd you know thousands of these proteins down to few set on which they should build their hypothesis. So they actually apply our technology or our search into the existing publications, into scientific media. So they can go ahead and apply our search engine and find all the relevant research. We can go really specifically drill down to protein pathways, protein transformation, protein to protein interactions, and surface that as a knowledge graph that very quickly provides them references to the very specific articles they're looking into. So that's a very you know applicable use case, solving real problem. So that has been essentially our driving factor. And from there, we have evolved into essentially a team collaboration, information extraction suite and pipeline. And we are very excited about bringing our next product in that line. So that's our journey.
Excellent. Excellent. Wonderful, Naveen. It's a great work and great application, especially in terms of saving lives and making people realize the importance of these algorithms. And because a lot of people are searching on Google with a lot of different styles of writing, and not everybody's style is comprehensible. And you're making it comprehensible by going into the depth of the natural language of the people and deciphering it, making it comprehensible by the systems, and therefore they're getting the right results. Great work. You mentioned that you have already filed a couple of patents in this domain. So what's your why for filing the patent applications?
That's a very important question. So, in my opinion, or at least, when we started work on this, one of the important reasons for filing the patent was actually, twofold. One, and to us that's more important, is having our own defense. So this is a very strong defense mechanism for us, at least back then. Me coming out of Microsoft, one of the big players, you know they had, as you know, Bing search engine already. uh, we have Google, which has its own search engine. We wanted to do something different, unique, and we believed, having our own patent in the space will provide us a defense in the long run. So for example, today there is GPT-2, GPT-3. There are a lot of these, you know, natural language based. They have gone into billions of variables. To provide these searches. So fair enough. They can do a very very good job. So to us, having our own patent gives us this legal defense that this is something that we have built, we have invented, and we actually have a patent dating back to 2014. This is 7 years ago, right? So we can point, that yes, we actually have a history of working in this space. And if it comes to, we are very willing to cross license. We are very willing to allow people to use our technology as long as there is an acknowledgement that this is our technology. And secondly, I think another important part of going with a patent is, I think this is probably core to your discussion as well, is, when it comes to valuation of a company, you know, they also look at, what is strategic about a given company, whether it's a talent acquisition, whether it's, customer acquisition, whether it's, the attach rate, or whether there is, a strategic component, technology. And to us, having this into our portfolio gave us that additional oomph. So there you go.
Excellent. Bang on it. Thank you so much, Naveen, for that. Satish, you have moved from corporate to now your own company. Uh, where do you see your company going with funding? Do you want to keep bootstrapping? Are you bootstrapped? Do you already have investors on board? What's on the valuation side? What's about the investors? How do you take it forward? You're muted.
Sorry about that. So we already have investors on board, and at the same time, we are currently going through the process of our next fundraise. So we are somewhere in the middle of that. And I do see the change that happens in the conversation from comparing how the conversations are happening now versus how it was happening last year. And it goes in all directions. It goes in the technology side. It goes in the ability to execute. It goes into also look in terms like how do we execute at the given scenario now everybody is going through, right? Because and this is also I think a common challenge faced by many deep tech companies, because many of these deep tech platforms, when an organization wants to implement it, they have to change, or there's always a change process associated with it. And and whether the companies are willing to do that change process in a time like this. So there's a lot more questions that comes in that direction in terms of like, okay, where do you guys see yourself compared to last year in terms of your product market fit, or are you going to make any changes in terms of how you're approaching your customers, or any change in terms of your target market where you go? So, but yes, it is the conversation or that leads up to how you value a company. It has multiple components, and our experience so far is like the criteria keep changing by the level of funding you're looking at, or the stage at which you are in. Because the first set of investors who come in, they want to be really convinced that, okay, there is a real value prop behind what we're doing, and they only looked at the team behind it and whether they had the capability to execute it. And because the dream we presented at that point of time, it was definitely a dream at that point, and it was mostly theoretical, saying that, again, we see challenges, and but to overcome those challenges, it needs to work in multiple phases. Like you build product, you build or collaborate with other companies to build standards, and these things are kind of interlinked, because if the standard things doesn't go anywhere, the product might not get the acceptance or the adoption that we are looking for. So but the initial set of investors really look at, okay, is the team really has the ability to execute on all these different fronts with limited resources, right? But now that 1 year down the line, when we're going through the second fundraise, the question is more around how do you focus? Because we do see the place at which we operate. We do see, even in deep tech, there are two different categories as we see it. One is deep tech applications that really kind of focused on one industry or one use case, or this is something they will solve. And then there are deep tech platforms, which is something that any organization, be it a startup or other organization, can leverage to build their own domain specific applications, right? So we fall into the second category of deep tech platform, and which makes it even more challenging to explain it to the investors, because it's a platform that can be used anywhere. So I always take the example of, like, it is something that is very similar to talking about a database, like a storage database, all those things. You cannot really say that, okay, this only goes in education or this only goes in pharma. But a real platform game is all about you providing building blocks, and then the other companies will come and build on top of it, and then make domain specific applications based on that. Because as a single company, having a dream or even positioning a dream saying that, okay, we can solve every problem and we can build solution for every domain is not going to be practical at all. So if you're in a platform game, I think the confidence investors really look at is having a strategy like that, also having an understanding that you alone cannot solve everything. Though you might be understanding the difficulties or opportunities, you might be spotting opportunities in different domains, but you cannot be focused on all those things. You need to, if you're doing it as a platform game, you're really, really focused on platform and really abstract and kind of build it in a way that other builders can leverage it. But if you are in an application game, then really focus on that application with a very specific use case, right? And that is our experience so far, and the conversations are going good. I'm sure that, again, the next level of conversation is going to be very, very different. And third, the last point, I'll also say that when we go to investors and with the deep tech thing, always look for the investors who are interested in investing in platform, because the platform game is very different than a deep tech, or platform game is very different than the consumer product game, because it takes time. It takes time to establish. You can build it, you can demo it, but for an organization to adopt it and go through their change process and then kind of make it like, yeah, this is now kind of providing value, it takes time. It is so we also need everybody who is coming in, be it the partners who are helping you to build it in terms of associates, or the investors who are coming in, the advisory board members who get in. We all need to make sure that we are all on the same page, so that we don't get distracted with kind of, you're building with a big dream, and then suddenly you say that there is so much of pressures, like, okay, scale down your stuff and then go focus on something else, which might be a good thing from an economic point of view, but it might be pretty hard to kind of get back to the actual story or the thing that you're building. So select your partners carefully, both associates and investors. Yeah.
Correct. So Satish, you clearly mentioned that, of course, you must choose your investors carefully. You should not just choose the money, but
Yep.
also choose the people behind the money. What their vision is. How do they think? Would they become your partners or would they become your foe? Now, the vision has to be aligned. If it's a B2B company or a B2C company, they're totally different game plans.
Right.
Now, one thing you mentioned, the criteria of the investors in the beginning is who are the founders, what's the team behind at the ideation stage, and once basically team is more important than the idea. Okay, and then gradually, what's your revenue, how many customers you got, all of those also come into play.
Right.
For a deep tech companies, the question is, for deep tech companies, what are the different criteria for valuation in a B2B space?
I'll talk from my experience so far. So the valuation discussions mostly goes around in terms of definitely it focuses in terms of what we are able to achieve so far. So compared to the theoretical part, which we're primarily using to convince the initial set of investors to, now that we are in a different stage. So they really look at what's the execution history of this team in terms of what they've managed to achieve so far. And that is not just about developing the product, but it kind of shows how is the company thinking to take this to market. So all the things that I talked about in terms of building partnerships or building other collaborative models where we bring in other partners also to kind of say that, okay, you're bringing this along with others, so that, okay, it proves two things. One, it proves a point that there are not just us as a company who is worried about this issue. There are many more companies who are worried about the same challenges, and they all want to get into a place where they can build or use things that are interoperable and using open standards and things like that. So one is like, okay, having a validation in terms of like, what's your go-to-market approach and what's the collaborative model and how we're building that stuff. The second comes in terms of how are we handling the customer engagements or the customer conversations, or how do we actually, what's the kind of tactics we use there? Like for many companies, like they all understand there is a challenge when it comes to data security, data integrity, data exchange, that they do understand those things, but it's also a chicken and egg issue in a way that when you talk about a data exchange, to fulfill its potential, it needs to make sure that, okay, every company who is part of the ecosystem needs to be part of a network like this or a system like this, so that they can leverage or maybe using an application that can actually do things, and those things will take time. So how do we handle that chicken and egg issue? I think that's another conversation that investors will dig deep into. And not to say that, look, the important thing there is, in most of the cases, we might be trying out things and be honest with investors or honest with partners, kind of saying that these are our current thought process based on our conversation with customers or with stakeholders, and we think this is something that is going to take us there. But those approaches might change in a way like market reacts, or once you implement your first solution, you directly work with customers, you might understand more areas where or different ways where you can take this solution forward. So always make sure that, again, we have an ability to adjust to the market demands and the way we respond to the market demands. And so that's another thing that investors look into in terms of like how flexible the team is and to handle different set of challenges. So a common thing that I keep on getting as a question on the technology side is like, how much are we married to the technology components that we have now? Because the world around us is changing so fast, and you cannot kind of say that, like, look, we have a stack that can, as it is, can live for maybe another 10 years. Like things has to become, there are different pieces that might undergo changes, and which might also lead to choosing something different maybe 2 years down the line. So how flexible, how adaptable are us for such thought process and such kind of changes. So they also look for that kind of flexibility. So and then in our experience so far, it is like it might take multiple conversations to build that confidence, because the initial set of conversations that happens is more focused on getting to know the team, getting to know their passion, getting to know what they're building, what opportunity they're seeing. But after the initial conversation, then there is always independent conversations or very focused conversations on different elements. And like the market focus itself could be multiple conversations that might come as a follow-up discussion. Technology could be another set of discussion that happens. So make sure that the team or the founders are really prepared to handle these conversations, and also be very sure or be in a mode that you are willing to accept feedback, because a lot of times I've been on the other side also in terms of like helping some of the investors to put their money in, but some of the things that we see in with a pitch or some of the discussions is some of the startups jump into pretty much in a defense position, like trying to defend what they already have, like not accepting the feedback. And that's not a good strategy, because you accept the feedback, whether you execute, you change, that's a different call. But when you discuss with a potential investor, the feedback is coming from their experience. They might or might not be very aware about the domain or the technology that we're building. So their feedback is mostly coming from their experience, right? So accept it, and if you don't have an answer right away, take some time and then send them an actual response in terms of like what it is, right? So yeah, I think those are some of the things that we have gone through, and that helped us in terms of establishing the value right, in terms of like rather just only focused on a value based on numbers, because in most of the deep tech, most of the things are in projection, which is like 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line. So, and the customers you're getting in, they're not paying customers in a way that like how the eventual product will be sold. You might be getting some revenues in terms of pilots, POCs, but that is not something that you can base as a revenue to project. So that's where my earlier point comes into picture. When you get investors who also understand similar domains or similar platforms, like deep tech needs a different moment, I think that level of understanding is really, really needed, because otherwise it'll be a pain. You might get the money, but it'll be a pain to sustain that relationship going forward.
Absolutely. So Satish, thank you so much for bringing that point home. I think what Satish is emphasizing on the point that you must have investors who have same vision. They are aligned to your vision. Your projections also matter, not just your current revenue. The market in which you're operating is also very important. Your market size, your future growth, your year-on-year growth, your exponential growth, your hockey stick growth, or your linear growth. All these things also matter, and your flexibility also matters. Your ability to accept feedback matters. A lot of things are determined in order to have the right valuation for your company. So it's not just one number, there are multiple attributes which define your company's valuation. Thank you so much, Satish, for bringing that point home. Dinesh, over to you. uh, so you have been doing companies and starting and exiting for many years. Would you want to start a company in India or US or Canada? Where do you want to start your company and why?
So it all depends on what is your market. When you talk about if you're talking about a consumer app, India is the best market in order for that particular application. And now, irrespective of even the Facebooks or Google of the world, they depend on the population of India in order for all those things. And when you talk about the tech talents, which has been in India, is immense. But currently, I'm into Canada. I have a Canadian organization. But the support which you get from the government side in order for starting a startup and executing it is immense in North American sides. So you have a lot of potential in what they can help you in. Because when you're trying to sell a vision, in India, they would ask you one question is, do you have a product? Is someone paying for you? And how much are they paying you today? And how much will they pay you tomorrow? And they will want to see your 6 months back. But when you're starting here, they see your idea and what is your market size? What's your go-to market strategy? They believe in your vision and you. That's the difference. But they just believe in numbers. So there is a give and take between both the things. Currently, we are located in Toronto, Canada, and we also have a team in India, which is located in Bangalore in order for working with us. So we have a hybrid team. So most of our tech team is located here, plus over there. And in terms of talent, both the places are equal. But when you talk about the support from government, Canada and North America is better, but we're also in terms of strategy. For example, when we started, our whole purpose was to solve the 911 issue or support the cameras or support the things. When you talk about North America, though, that's where the privacy concerns are also like the big brother is watching. Right. So when you talk about 911 and emergency conditions, here there are a lot of prevalences which is given. For example, we are doing a current product with one of the large vendors in North America for finding the fault detection in the electrical line and gas pipeline using cameras and drones and other conditions. That's immense market. So the in terms of market adoption, it's easier. It's easier to sell that, hey, this is my pilot, try it, and it's a POC. Take it up for 6 months and let's have a conversation on how to build this product together. We have this great vision of the product, and this is what the initial there are early adopters which is willing to go ahead and try your product way before they paying you, because payment is a secondary category. First thing is someone has to believe in your product that this can help them out. Unless until someone is being an early onboarder, no matter how much you build as an idea, how much you have it as a product, it'll never see the days of light. And there is a lot of other intellectual properties which has been registered in North America. That's another perspective. And even right now, if you're trying to file the patent initially, you file it for the US and then you take it for the other countries. That's a general norm which is going on around all the world. Even we have two intellectual properties which has been registered, which was in US, and then we got it converted into Canada and the rest of the world.
Excellent, wonderful. So what Dinesh is saying that it depends on your idea. You can if it's a B2C app, you go to a populated country like India. If it's B2B and you need support of the government, of the agencies, of the infrastructure, you need to be in the North America. For example, if you are the camera space and if you're doing analytics on camera, the cameras must already have been installed. Only then you can talk about doing the analysis of the camera. The cameras are not installed in developing country, or you cannot do any analytics on them. That's a great point. And of course, the government in these countries, US, Canada, are also more supportive, more conducive of your idea. They're not just looking at your numbers, they're looking at much more than that, what problem you're solving and beyond that. Great point, Dinesh. What's your experience on with investors?
So in terms of investors, it's one of the primary thing in your product, because you might have a product and an idea, you might have a client which is interested in trying it out, but an investor plays a very vital role. The two things which they are interested is what's your go-to-go strategy for the market, and how are you going to actually attract more customers once it is down the line. And you would want someone who is already knowing something about the space, not someone who's just going to put the money in and who's going to ask you in 12 months, hey, what is my returns? If you're having a client, if you're having an investor like that, your vision shrinks, because your focus is on what to answer to an investor down the line and how can I get the returns to it, rather than focusing on your idea. So when you talk about investors, there are a lot of people. First thing you'll have to find out is the investor interested in this space? Has he invested in any other company which is prior to this on the similar space, at least relative? If that's a condition, then you talk to him on how you can actually get your idea and how you can actually partner with other companies, because you should be open for that too. Because there is a lot of times it's a conflict of interest, saying that, hey, I'm doing that better than the other company which you've invested doesn't actually sell the product. It's all about what can you do it in a point, it's sync with other companies, and are they having a portfolio of companies, which is very important. Have they built on any deep tech? Because traditional companies, when I started my first company, it was all about what number am I getting today, tomorrow can I increase it. But now in terms of deep tech, like emerging tech, like quantum computing, or it could be AI, your initial time of 1 to 3 years goes in building the product. You're getting the data collection, you're building your tech stack, you're modifying the different perspectives, because it's a new idea which is coming into the market. At this point of time, it is very important for you to get someone who knows what the stack is, who knows what the pathway for building this product or go to market is, and who also knows what an intellectual property is interested. And the other thing which you would want your investor to know is what kind of exit strategy are they looking at? Are they looking at an IPO or an acquisition? What are their preference? Is that aligning with you? If you're talking about an acquisition, can they actually get you to someone who's connected to that space? So all those parameters works very important when you're choosing an investor.
Excellent. Those are again great tips. Again, I think you are again trying to bring Satish's point home. It's very important to choose your investor carefully, align your visions, align your future, so that you don't get divorced in the marriage. It's like a marriage, right? It's going to continue for a few years. So you're not just dating. Great points, Dinesh. Again, over to you, Naveen. Naveen, you mentioned a very wonderful point in the last round. You mentioned that when you started this company, NLP Core, you were thinking and you were expecting that Google's and Microsoft's and Facebook's will not do what you're doing. That is one philosophy of starting an idea which these people will not be able to replicate or will not want to get into. That's one philosophy of starting a venture. A second philosophy which I have come across in the last few years is people are trying to solve small problems which, let's say, Google's, Facebook, Microsoft's, and Amazon are not solving, and they would acquire you in 5 years because they would want to do something which you have done. So, like, imagining that gap which they're not doing, and tomorrow you will fit in that gap. After 5 years, you will be worth billions, and you will just be plugged in into their ecosystems, which they are not currently aware of or not currently paying attention to. So these are two different philosophies. How do you choose one of these? So in other words, how does the innovator, how does the entrepreneur in the deep tech space choose one of these two philosophies?
uh, we do get asked these questions, when we are talking to potential investors ourselves, so it is, very, very relevant to our discussion. One of the things that I have always maintained is, I think, as an entrepreneur, one should not, and this is, my personal belief. So others, I'm sure, will have different opinion here. Is that one should not think too much about the exit strategy, whether it's IPO or whether it's merger and whether it's getting acquisition by one of these, big players. Instead, I think, and very relevant to our case, is find those niches or use cases where our technology and our stack can provide end-to-end solution to a pain point that the customer has and that the customer is willing to pay for. And if we do this right, and if we can make it viral and we actually can leverage it and demonstrate it as a viable platform, the right things would happen. If the technology is great, if the platform is something that scales from one vertical or one customer problems to 10 customer problems, you know either the your venture itself will have legs to stand on its own, that you may not need those players, or at least it'll give you valuations that the big three or a big four would be willing to pay top dollars for it. So to me, uh, I would rather focus on the fundamentals of building your company, making your entrepreneurial journey. That would be, in my opinion, having something as a strategic asset, be it IP in terms of technology, it could be a hardware piece, it could be, deep tech, as we were talking about, and then finding the use cases on which you can build a product, and in my case, product and a platform. That should be our focus. Find the right set of investors who believe in the same journey with you, and then let's go on the journey where it leads us.
Absolutely, makes sense. I think that's again a wonderful perspective. I think what Naveen is trying to bring home is that uh, a company is like your baby, right? You don't get a baby in life because you want to sell it off. You are
That's
nurturing
right.
it, you are building it, you are feeding it, you are giving your time, effort, money. That's the way you give to your baby. So, and the idea is not to how to make money out of the baby. Yes, tomorrow, of course, the baby is making money for you. You are retired, and your kid is making money for you. That's good. But then perhaps you should not be starting into a venture in order to sell it out. I'm not sure if I have to use the right analogy, Naveen, but thank you so much for. I think that's very important because if you're building something for the purpose of selling it, you perhaps will not be giving you 100%. But if you're building something for creating value, for making a difference, for making a change, then it automatically will have value, valuations, and people will love it. People want to come and talk to you, invest, buy, do whatever. That's a great learning for all of us. Naveen, thank you so much for that. So coming to you, Satish, uh, you were so your in your corporate journey. Uh, I'm sure you learned a lot. Uh, what are the most important things that which you learned in your corporate journey, because you spent a lot of time in the corporate in Red Hat, which you could also use in your entrepreneurial journey? So, what things can you pick up from our corporate journeys and can use that in our entrepreneurial journey?
Yep. So I think the most key thing that I took from my corporate journey is the ability to execute on a vision. I think this is something that I had the privilege to experience that within Red Hat. The way the company is to operate is we build products or platforms based on what we see as an industry need, and then also collaborating with a various set of communities that is coming up with various kind of projects. So Red Hat is trying to build a platform using all these different projects that's up there. It's not just about taking the projects, but also kind of addressing what the market needs or what the gaps exist when it comes together. So for me, that 17 years was like there are different mini ventures that has been started in that, which is like, and it goes through every phase that we experience today in the startup world. The only thing was like, yeah, you don't need to chase investors. You only need to convince a set of executives within the company, right? So that's the only difference I see, because there also it goes in the same way. So like if you have a vision, or if you see a spot an opportunity, how do you end up convincing everybody else on the ladder, saying that, okay, this is something that we see as an opportunity. The market is demanding it. The technologies are maturing. So everything is aligning well. So now this is a strategy that we need to do this. And I also experience, like, it is not that like every proposal or every opportunity is spot. And if you move a proposal, it is not that okay, every proposal will get the same level of acceptance. So you also need to deal with rejections, and maybe the rejections might end up you're completely dropping that because you accepted the feedback, things are not ready. Or it might be more in terms like, okay, you go back to your drawing board, improve it, and based on the feedback, and then go back again and submit it. Because in some cases, that's a good strategy. And that's again, all depends on how you take the feedback, right? In a way that okay, you still believe that okay, there's an opportunity, and you understood the flaws in your pitch initially, and then work on the feedback, improve the thing, and make it look relevant to the stakeholders. I think that's the same thing that we are also doing in the startup world. Like when we started the company, the set of the investors that we have, those are not the only investors that we reached out, right? It is like we had a lot of conversations, and a few kind of materialize, or the few kind of get to a point where we both get on agreement on where we're going, what we're doing, and all those things. But in the process, you also need to deal with a lot of rejections. At least in our case, okay, there are people who has their own reasons to doubt in terms of where it go and whether there is a market, and that all comes from their own experience of the market. But as Dinesh was pointing out, in terms of when this also become a critical parameter when you select your investors, because one of the things we keep on doing is we kind of look in terms of the investor portfolio and try to see what kind of investments or what kind of companies are they investing on, because that gives a picture in terms of are they ready to take risk, or are they ready to be stay invested on something that might take maybe a couple of years to realize or show its potential. So we do that, and then kind of it also give you an idea in terms of like what should be your pitch strategy in terms of like how you should be outlining a problem. And because if an investor who is investing in all deep tech companies and also always looking for the future, he's not looking to see a pitch that kind of say, I'm going to make money in 2 years, right? And because it's not something that will relate to them, and then from their experience, they can say much better than us, saying that that's not going to work out, because you're not building something that can, if you're calling it a deep tech, it is not something that that can get to market so fast. So So yeah, so having those kind of things as your checklist is good. Yes, a lot of things can come from the corporate experience, but I think I'll say the key is don't try to build anything within a box. Like always try and get out in the market, be talk to your friends, talk to your customers, talk to people who are working in other companies who might be doing something similar, or try attempted something. Also, if you have the ability, like okay, I personally use LinkedIn a lot in that case to try and see talk to their items and then try to understand like what went wrong, because we always say that like, a lot of startups did not reach their potential and they kind of goes away before that. So and talk to them and try to see what went wrong, right? Is the technology element, or is the market opportunity? Or so it's all about like taking a lot of learning and then kind of charting your path. So having corporate experience is good, but I'll not say that like, look, that's something you really need to start a startup. It is all about like how you go and accumulate that experience. You having experience, or you build a team that has an experience, or you keep on learning by talking to more and more people and pick up on things.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So yes, so Satish is definitely emphasizing on the fact that you can actually learn a lot from your corporate experience, how to build teams, how to train, how to behave in the office, how to make sure that you have a fabulous team, because team at the end of the day, which will make you or break you or break your company. It's a very important part of our ventures. Dinesh, one question to you. You mentioned about the product market fit uh, of an idea and how much people can pay and market size and all of that. This is one thing, of course, one must consider being practical and rational or logical. Then there are a second set of innovators, okay, second set of entrepreneurs who are just passionate, and they're driving their company based upon one thing: passion. Suppose somebody has passion for meditation, and that person will just give everything to meditation, the app, the market around it. He would not perhaps care about the market fit or how many people will pay, not pay, competition. They are just merely driving their company based upon one thing, it is and passion. And if you put so much passion in something, you are bound to succeed. Uh, what do you say about them, who are not really checking all of that, but just driving and running based upon passion?
So in terms of an entrepreneurship journey, the one thing which is important is not, as I said, product fit and everything is important for an investor in order to invest. But it's in terms of an entrepreneur, the one thing which is very important is he not giving up. No matter what the obstacle is, he not giving up. Whether it's he driving towards his passion or he's driving towards a product fit, once he comes to a stage that no matter what, he has to make sure this goes ahead, and that not giving up strategy or ideology is in him, there's no way he's going to lose it. So when you talk about finding a market fit and all those things, is to convince yourself at times if you're not passionate enough, because that's what drives you. And it is also to convince others about your passion, because there is a fact. But the other way around is proving that I have a passion to it and I'll definitely win it. And these are my strategies and these are my methods. So either way, the product fit and other things will just induce the passion in you for driving towards that. But if you already have the passion, that will give you enough success to it.
Great. I think that's a great point. So taking his question to taking his answer to Naveen. Naveen, one of the very important quality entrepreneur should have is not to give up, not to get bogged down, never say die, not always go with the solution. So these are the qualities in an entrepreneur. Now, 95%, 90% of the companies of the startups fail in first 3 or 4 years. Now, when should they give up? A lot of times they would put mortgages and borrow and beg and steal and try to run the company. But sometimes entrepreneurs fail to decide when should they give up and when should they let go. What's your comment on that?
I suppose that is the billion-dollar question, but there is something to be said about the grit. I think that's the word being used for the entrepreneurial spirit and the passion and the drive to not giving up. But yes, I think something that Satish said. It's basically you know having network of people that you can depend upon, whether it's first of all your customer that is telling you, whether your product is the right fit or not, whether it's your conversations, in your attempt to raise the money, when you're trying to have these conversations. And there are, irrespective of where you are, whether you are in North America or whether you are in India, there is a pretty seasoned investor network, and these folks are actually willing to talk. So you can simply go, and you don't have to necessarily go and present your pitch deck, or you can have I mean, personally, to me, this is a great soundboard. They can give you, their feedback based upon their experiences, based upon the other companies they have seen in the space, and they are good checkpoints to you, and they will give you enough indicators. And I think, one of the philosophies that I have is that, I know we we as an individuals have to have something like a third eye, or basically a way to watch over yourself. So always evaluate yourself, your company, your work, your employees, you know from the eyes and ears of somebody else. You being you, have a third person perspective into your own actions, where your company is headed, what your clients are saying, rather impartially. And you would pick up the right signals, and it'll come down to making the call based upon those signals. Do they amplify together to compel you to continue forward, or they are giving you mixed signals, and the signals are mixed enough for you to basically rethink, reevaluate, and start over.
That's a very important point. So what Naveen is saying, you would pick up the signals, but I'm saying you should pick up the signals of these customers and people around you, your product, your feedback. You should pick up the signals and then decide what's the way forward. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you so much. We're almost done. If you have any questions on the IP side of how IP can bring valuation to your company, any questions on patents, trademarks, how we help your clients, or any question that you want to ask to a fellow speaker, you can shoot now. Perhaps nobody was ready for that.
I think
So we're
all of
good.
us. I think all of us are in the same journey of getting the intellectual properties registered, so everyone are in the same page.
Yeah.
Very good, very good, excellent. That's a great thing that guys are doing, guys. Really, again, thank you so much for being a giver. You did give away a lot of secrets, a lot of your secret sauce, your experience in tidbits, which people can use, especially in these times, to run their companies properly, efficiently. A lot of people are struggling. A lot of people have also lost their jobs and lives. Some people have lost their bed. Some families have lost their bed earners. A lot of this information and knowledge you just gave out today as a giver would be helpful and would be disseminated on different medias. Thank you so much for being a giver, and really appreciate talking to you. Have a fantastic day ahead.
Likewise.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thank you, Amit.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Stay safe. Bye bye.